Anybody else? Okay. So one thing about life is that one thing's for sure, problems are going to come, problems are going to go. And the reason I gave the definition between solution and resolution is because sometimes we can have a solution, but the issue won't be resolved.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to give you a perfect example of that, because y'all know I don't mind using myself for real as a real life example. For instance, let me see. Okay, so I had my home. Y'all know my home messed up. So I have a solution. I patched up what I could, but it isn't resolved. In other words, that patch is only going to last for so long before it comes back to the same old problem. So when dealing with internal conflict, we have to know who we are, where we come from, how did we get to this point in life, how did we get where we're at right now. And that's where we get the acquired characteristics. Some of us was raised in different, we all were raised in different environments. And this can alter how we deal with our internal conflicts or with any type of conflict. With any type of conflict by our acquired characteristics. Now, I'm going to read to you what the acquired characteristics theory is. If an organism changes, you can write this down too. If an organism changes during life in order to adapt to its environment, those changes are passed on to its offspring. Does anybody know what that means?
Read that definition again.
I'm going to read it again. If an organism changes during life in order to adapt to its environment, those changes are passed on to its offspring. In other words, what this theory is saying basically is that we adapt to our environment after a while. After a while, we adapt to certain environments. Say, like, I'm from North Carolina, but if I go up to Colorado where it gets extremely cold and they have blizzards, if I stay there long enough, guess what? I'll adapt to that condition. That's basically what it's saying. And so when we deal with conflict, we have to look at what type of conditions did we come from? What type of adaptations did we have to adapt to? I know transition from being a kid to an adult, we still have a lot of our parents' ways in us. We have a lot of our parents' traits in us, which sometimes is good and sometimes is bad. In my case, it was bad because I'm talking about my biological mother. Another example, I'm talking about my biological mother. Because when I saw them deal with their conflict and she deal with her internal conflict, she ran to the bottle. She drank liquor and beer. She went out and brought friends. And guess what little Jamie did when she got older?
The same thing.
The same thing. But what if Jamie moved off and around that environment and got around healthier situations, more positive people, and I stayed around them? Then maybe I could change, and that's what happened. Jamie got educated and got around some educated people that helped me to change. So then when I became frustrated with myself for making wrong decisions, I didn't beat myself up. Yeah, I might have lost sleep here and there, but eventually I got up and said, you know what? It has happened. It's time to accept the decision that I made and move on. And that's what I had to do. So self-conflict is like really horrible because it is a struggle between your character and your conscience. It has to do a lot with your values and your beliefs. You know, sometimes they conflict one another. Another example of that is this past week when I had some work issues. You know, my belief is and my values are to respect elders, respect people or respect spiritual leaders. You know, really, you know, stay in your place. I'm that type of person. But also, my belief is to speak the truth, and the truth will set you free.
Amen.
And so what ended up happening was I spoke the truth, and I was set free. But the problem was I was like, should I have said that? I mean, that's an apostle. Should I have said that? Did I say it right? So I struggled with that internal conflict right there of did I say the right thing? Did I have the right to even say that? But in the end, I realized that conflict was resolved because after staying up a night and not really resting well about it, I resolved the conflict because I did my part. I apologized for whatever went down, whatever offenses that I had did or they thought I did. I apologized for that. And at the end of the day, I told Jamie, you will grow from this. You're not going to fall from this. You're going to grow from this. But the internal part of it, it did hurt. It did hurt to know that, you know, sometimes you have to speak up against things that you don't necessarily agree with. You have to stand for something or you'll fall for anything. And that's what I always tell everybody. That's why I gave y'all that SWOT analysis to do so that you will know exactly who you are and where your weaknesses are. Does anybody have any questions so far?
Not at this time.
Okay. So has anybody ever decided to just look up the definition of peace?
No.
No, I hadn't thought about doing that.
The definition of peace says freedom from disturbance, quiet, tranquility. Y'all, excuse me.
Tranquility.
Oh, restfulness, privacy, and solitude. That's what peace is. Peace is when you're clear, your conscience is clear, you can relax, you can rest, you're not worrying about any decisions or anything else. So what if we were to learn how to adapt a lot quicker, adapt to certain situations a lot quicker, but still be slow to respond to the anger, you know? Has there ever been a time, you know, like where you really just beat yourself up, and I mean you really went off on yourself so bad till you were just crying and everything?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me turn my papers here. Okay. Let me see my notes, y'all. Okay, so again, internal conflict is with your own soul. It's your ideas of right or wrong, physical limitations, and choice or decisions. And internal conflict can cause painful thoughts, depression, anxiety, could give you physical pain. In other words, you are your own bully. You're your own bully. And it is a choice. We even sometimes think, has anybody ever been in a relationship? Let me put it like this. Has anybody ever been in a relationship where you just got done wrong and you said, well, I'm part to blame of it. It's my fault. It's my fault. Where you just told yourself that you deserve it.
I did.
Yeah.
That is internal conflict. That is internal conflict where you didn't find where like you knew you didn't deserve it, but at the same time you felt that you did deserve it. And that's part of the reason why a lot of people, you know, don't fully heal and stuff, because they don't realize what internal conflict is. It's when you know that this ain't right, but at the same time, even though that's wrong, You want to be right over here. And it's your mind pulling against one another. Your mind is just pulling everything in, confusing everything. So everything around us starts with a thought, right?
Right.
It starts with a thought. What if you didn't deserve that? What if you didn't deserve what somebody did to you? How would you have felt about yourself then?
Confident.
Yes, you would have been confident to walk away with your head held high, knowing that you gave it all you got with no regrets. Hey, it happened, and you did the best you could, and you didn't beat yourself up because you knew who you were. You knew who you were. And too many times we find a lot of women, and there are some men too, but, you know, this line is mostly for the women right now. But there are a lot of women right now beating themselves up for some stuff they didn't even do. And I'm not just talking about women on this line. I'm talking about other women that may be that may listen to this broadcast later on. There are women who are beating themselves up for small things such as, I could have, if I would have cleaned up in time, you know, we wouldn't have got in that fuss. Only if I would have made it to the bus stop in time. What about the women who, one thing I used to beat myself up about was my dad. My dad had passed, and I was the one making the main decision on his life, whether to either continue to let him go on a feeding tube or to just let him die like he was. And my decision was to let him die like he was. Even though I knew that was the right thing to do, still I was being beat up by it. I was being beat up by it because there was another part of me that was saying, what about your faith? What if you put him on the feeding tube and he comes back? You know, and then there was another side of me that was saying, look, he's 86 years old. Or was it 88? Sorry, Daddy. But there was another side of me that was saying, look, he's tired. His body's been cut on. They've been poked on him. He's steady having strokes back to back. How could you be selfish to sit there and see your father having 10, 15 strokes back to back, but you want to put him, knowing that his brain isn't going to be working like that, but you want to put him on a feeding tube. So it was a battle between my belief, my spirituality, and my conscience all at one time. And it took me a year to deal with that, for that decision. In the long run, that was the best decision that I could have ever made. That was the best decision that I could have made, was to just let Daddy go in peace. And, you know, there was external conflict, as we all know. Anytime internal, we always got external that comes and jumps at us too, which means outside conflicts, which would have been sisters and brothers who say, well, how you going to say Daddy can't make it? You know, stuff like that. You don't know what God is doing. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So you have that type of conflict going on. And what you have to really do is set yourself down. You have to set yourself down and ask yourself, is this true? I had to sit in that hospital, and I asked myself, is this true? Is my daddy really dying, or is he fighting to live? You know, and it was hard. I had to distinguish the truth, and that's what we have to do as women. When we begin to have those internal battles like that, we have to sit ourselves down and look at the truth for what it is. Was you really bad to that man? Was you bad enough to that man for him to go out and cheat on you? Was you bad enough to that man for him to beat on you? Was you bad enough to that man for him to steal your money and go spend it on another woman? Was you bad enough to that man for him to beat your children and beat you? Do y'all see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
You have to look at the truth for what it is. And when you look at the truth, no, you was not bad enough for that. You didn't deserve that. Nobody deserves that. When it gets to that point, it's time to just let it go anyway.
Right.
So the next thing to learn about internal conflict, and this will help you a whole lot. Are you